27th meeting of Finance to order. Roll call, Alder Dorf here, Alder Corpus Dax is here, Alder Johnson's here, and we anticipate Alder Galvin will be here in a few minutes. And let's go to, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right. Approval of the minutes. Any changes you want to the minutes from April 13th? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Johnson. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Regular business. Consideration with possible action on the intergovernmental agreement amendment with the Village of Alloway. So who would like to talk in this?
I'm going to let Chief Litton take this.
Litton? Okay.
Well, good evening, Alders. I provided a memorandum I hope was included in your packet today.
Yep.
It's fairly self-explanatory, but as you're aware, we had our second merger agreement that began January 1st of this year. And that agreement included language that differs from the Alloway agreement in that the formation of what we're calling the advisory group. The advisory group is established in Bellevue. A couple of differences, and the simplest differences are is that it's because we have Alloway and Bellevue now, we have to include Bellevue in those meetings. And so we need, instead of having 5 members, we're going to end up with 6. 2 from the city, 2 from Alloway, 2 from Bellevue. And the other, I guess, I wouldn't call it a major change, but a significant change is that before the agreement didn't permit elected officials to be on the committee. And that seemed to, in our experience since 2012, that became more problematic than favorable for sure, because of the fact that we were having to repeat information to elected officials, village administrators, and so forth multiple times because the information was not being passed along from the volunteer citizen committee members back through the channels. So we amended it in the Bellevue agreement. We had talked with Alloway up front about it, and they were amenable to the changes. Alloway has changed their end of the agreement already and has appointed 2 members. They have one hand. Brad Lang, who is their village administrator. Bellevue appointed one of their trustees and former fire chief to the committee. So this basically is cleanup language for the intergovernmental agreements. They expired. This particular agreement, Alloway, expires in 2027, and at that point we'll have to negotiate a completely entire new document. But this pertains only to this section.
Seeing none? Oh, okay. Motion to approve by Alder Johnson.
Second.
Second by Alder Galvin. Alder Galvin is with us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is the report of the Claims Committee. Are there any comments or concerns about the claims report? If there are, we have. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
That's the right motion.
I think so. Right, Diana?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All those, see no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Did you say aye, Alder Corpus Dax?
Yes.
Okay, that would be 3 of us then. So Alder Galvin is gone again, but he'll be back, I'm sure. All right. On to the shortest item on the agenda, discussion of the 2021-2025 capital improvement plan. So Director Allenbecker and I discussed this, and we're going to bite this off in pieces as we have done in the past. And we're going to just kind of go over a general review, looking at maybe the first 24 pages at first of all the requests, and then realizing that this plan comes from 2021 and goes to 2025. We're going to focus on 2021 for right now. We're going to look at the police department, and if that doesn't go too long, then we're going to look at the fire department. And it's only 617. It's not too bad, but we're not going to stay here until our brains can't work anymore, because there are a lot of numbers in this, and we got to understand these numbers. So I'm going to let Director Ellenbecker just take it away.
Thank you. Again, as you know, this has been an evolving process. In the last couple of years, we've been trying to pull together a more consolidated capital improvement plan, a five-year plan. We kind of put it in a book format, and I know it's overwhelming. 699 pages seems it's a lot. But really the summary pages are on top. And then if you want to have more questions on a specific item, then there's a detailed page behind it that either the department, someone in the department has put together. We didn't expect, as you can see, there is not even an action item on this item. It's just for the discussion. We don't expect to approve it all in one night. The goal is probably to bring it back, hit another couple departments, maybe on the 5/11 finance meeting, and then hit some more departments on the 5/25th, on the 25th of May, some other departments. Again, it was a challenge, and I wouldn't want to expect all the department heads to sit in on 3 meetings. So this worked well to have either just 1 or 2 department heads sitting in on the meeting. We thought we'd start with Chief Smith, since he's got a few days left, and we thought we would, kind of tackle him, kind of get his insight. I will go very, very quick because due to the time, this again isn't the first time we looked at it. Becomes a little more defined every year. We now have at least a table of contents. The book is a little easier to read. Again, the book is separated by departments, and then we have 3 categories. We call it major, or it's equipment, or it's fleet. And so that's how the book is categorized. Again, this is meant to be a long-term financial projection of the long-term capital needs, or the next 5-year capital needs for the city. It's meant to be a systematic approach, realistic program. And so I'm just recapping some of the things the whole program, as you know, it's an evolving project. We expect to update it on an annual basis. And as Alder Dorf mentioned, not only do we want to look at 2021, focusing on it, because that's if we're going to be borrowing. If we're going to borrowing, we will be borrowing yet in this year to cover some of the items that were requested in 21. But we should also be looking at potentially 2022 column, because this will be kind of leading into the base for the 22 budget. Again, we will certainly be bringing back this and tweaking it again in fall, the 22 column. But we want to start getting this book to become part of our budget process. So look at 21, start looking at 22, 23, 24, 25 are still estimates. They're not going to be as defined. They're not going to be as precise as in the later years, but it's a direction on what the department heads or the departments feel that they need. I know I have some page numbers in our book. I would like to go to the first page of the book that has financial numbers on. The book itself has a page number of 7, but it would also be in your electronic version, it would be on page 18. And I just want to explain a little bit on this page before we get, like I said, I don't want to take too much time. This page is called the funding revenue source. And as you can see, the column 2021 has much more detail than any other column before that. And so we worked really hard. Like if items are in here, we try to find if there are other funding sources to pay for this other than just borrowing for it. And so
just page 18 or page 8?
It's if you're in the book itself, the capital improvement book, it would be page 7 of the book.
Okay.
Or if you're on the electronic packet, it should be on page 18 of your electronic packet.
No.
It's page 9.
Yeah, mine is page 8 or 9. Yeah, I think I'm on the electronic packet. Well, you're talking a book as if it's a pre-book, right? You're talking, is that?
Oh, you know what? She's probably on the full packet. I'm just on the, if you're just on the CP booklet, it's page 9. If you're in the full packet, it's page 18.
Okay.
Oh, and okay, I see.
Checks out.
Yep,
Okay.
there are small page numbers on the bottom of the book, and so that might be easier if I just look at
Yeah.
this. So this is actually on page 7. On page 7 of the book, there's a small number on the bottom right-hand corner. Again, this page just wanted to explain to you. So on top of the major capital items, these are the funding sources that we've identified at this point. There's some parks had some leftover fund balance from previous projects. We're going to roll that in. If their project gets approved, we're going to use some fund balance. Fund account, they had some money left over from previous borrowing. Right of way, our 407 fund. The next item is what's left that right now we didn't find other funding sources for of 8.2 million. Then you have grants. There's a parks grant that we're looking to fund one of these items with. We have LRIP, which is local roads. Then we have a transfer from a BG bonding, and then we have the vehicle registration or the wheel tax. So this page is just saying that even though our request is bigger than we would want, there are other funding sources. Remember that at this point, there are items in here that we believe that the American Rescue Plan Act may be able to cover. And again, that information, those guidance doesn't come out from the Treasury at this point. So I would prefer to look less at the funding page, but I wanted to explain to you kind of what this was on this page, and really look at the items, look at the expenses, look at the department's requests, and determine, ask some questions. Do you also feel that, based on what they said or the explanations that, yep, this is something that's a priority we really need this year? Could we postpone a year? Could we reduce the amount? Could we reduce the quantity? Is it maybe something we don't feel that we need? So I think it's more important to be looking at the expense items. And then within the next 2 weeks, as we get more guidance, we may be able to pay for some of the American Rescue Plan Act if we don't already have another funding source for it. Any questions on just the revenue page at this point?
Just a quick one. Director Ellenbecker, if you could, the transfer from Bay Beach bonding, is this funding that's been previously bonded but not spent?
That is correct. There has been some change between the Parks Department and really the long-term plan of Bay Beach's friends of the Bay Beach, about $5 million for the beach, and that included the sand beach, the change house, the pier, and I think they're scaling back. I don't know all the details, but the plan was to scale back on the pier and some of these items. So this money has been borrowed already. And at this point, if the parks projects are approved, the recommendation is to transfer the money from the Bay Beach or already borrowing and not borrow that additional money and use that money for a park project. This money's already in house. We're paying interest on it, and right now they don't plan to spend it. And so it really would, overall, it reduces our borrowing. And then if Bay Beach at some point decides that they want to move forward with a project, let's say in a couple of years, then they could go borrow again. So it's really trying to help out the Bay Beach, their funding. And then if enough projects in parks is approved, then we would just transfer it and really use money that's already set aside for Bay Beach.
See, and I think that's an important acknowledgement, right? Because you're basically forcing the financing of that project to go before council again, which also can come with an undetermined outcome. So I just think that that's an important observation to make. Right now, this funding is sitting there, meaning that this project could proceed as planned. But if a future council were to say, no, I'm not going to rebond, if you will, for the installation of the beach, that could essentially kill whatever phase of that project is pending. So I think it's just important for this group to understand that. The other question that I have is related to the fund balance for pavement and the fund balance for right-of-way. That's 3.5 million almost. That seems rather substantial. Is that normal?
I start with the right-of-way one. That was an item that was all for Webster Avenue. They had borrowed enough money because they had to purchase land, and then they also had to, in many cases, they had to give money for relocation. And that when they went out for that borrowing years ago, they really didn't not know what it was going to cost them to buy up all that land and to relocate. And from what I understand from what Director Grenier said is that Tom Giese really did a fantastic job negotiating, doing fair negotiations. But at some point, we have a little over $1.1 million left over from the Webster project. And so at this point, it doesn't pay to hang on to that. You know, there's always let's hang on to it in case we have another right-of-way project. Well, again, this was borrowed a few years ago. We would prefer to use that to do it for current projects within Director Grenier's right-of-way projects. I mean, not right away, I'm sorry, into his infrastructure projects. The pavement in the 401, those are just some projects potentially that were maybe decided at one point last year that either didn't get completed or that maybe did not get, maybe for one reason or another, they were canceled if he had requested the projects a year ago. As we talked about earlier, we're going to do it department by department, and of course, Director Grenier could ask questions better. Knowing he's only back part-time this week, we decided we would wait and keep anything infrastructure questions maybe for 2 weeks from now. But I can certainly ask Director Grenier to maybe be a little more prepared to answer that question. But these are projects that were earlier bonded for and either didn't complete it or got canceled.
Yeah, and that's a good enough description for now. One quick question, though, that I think you could answer, Director Ellenbecker. When we have a fund balance like that, does that actually contribute to the general fund? No. Or are those two separate balances? So in what I'm asking, you know, if we spend this money here, does that reduce the general fund as well?
It does not. These are monies that were borrowed and are specific into these funds. You know, of course, our general fund is considered Fund 101. Anything that starts with a 4, so the pavement, 401, 407, those are all considered construction funds. So that money was borrowed, went directly in there. So it does not affect our 101 fund at all.
So it's kind of like a little slush fund for the department.
So
or a big one.
Yes. And again, you probably haven't seen this in the past, but we worked really hard this last year. Every one of our funds that had any kind of balance in, I made them help justify, look at it, say, hey, some of them are even small dollar amounts, you know, 30,000 here, but can we use that money, use it down and not borrow an additional, like say 30,000 for an item because it's sitting here and it's previous bonded money. So we worked really hard to try to look to see if there's available funding at other places.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I would really prefer not to focus it on the funding yet, but I think we should look at the expenses. If we go to the next page, Pam is going to be, Director Manley will scroll to the next. This is a recap of our of all the requested items, and it's going to be by category and then by department. So the first portion is your major: City Hall, DPW, Fire, Parks, Police, and then what we call other funding sources, which means it's just not funded by the general levy. So that's going to be your parking division, sanitary, storm, and TIFs. So those are all the dollars requested for major projects for 2021 and again 2022 and beyond. And then the next portion, it's separated the same way. You have equipment by departments, and then you have fleet by departments. Really what we're looking to do today is tackle and take a look at police in particular. And if we have time, fire, otherwise fire could be one of the first ones on our next meeting, knowing that it is getting to be about 6:30 at this point. So really what we could do is, one more correct. If you want to roll here, these are by our departments. So into the police section, right there is Director Manley has just highlighted is police. So in 2021, they are looking for $690,000 for equipment and fleet and about $1.2 million or 1.3 in 2022. This is where we would potentially ask the chief to explain kind of what's in those numbers, what is it for, and then you can ask some questions. And then of course you can ask for anything within the police, major items, equipment, or fleet. Anyone have specific questions right away, or do you just want the chief to talk to a little bit what's in his numbers?
Chief, would you like to talk? After you finish chewing, you're actually muted. You're muted.
Yeah. So, sorry, someone gave me some venison and my wife made goulash and it was fabulous. So anyway, what we are looking at here is our expenditures that we project. Almost all of this stuff used to be in our operating budget. For instance, cars. We typically need about 15 new vehicles per year to keep our fleet operational. We've known in the past that if we let that slide over the years, we end up losing cars that fall off of the other end, and they're just really undrivable. So 15 cars a year. I think there's a few less. I'll ask Rick Jerkanis to jump in here if I say anything that's incorrect. He's our business manager, and Kevin Warwick, of course, is on the line. We kind of went over all these this morning. And so what you see in addition to the vehicles are the camera replacements. Those are just standard replacements to upgrade cameras when they reach the end of their life. And then we have the radios and the radio replacements for the squads and radio replacements for our officers. And I believe that's 10 per year, if my memory serves me right. So there's really nothing too fancy in here, nothing unusual that we're asking for. It's kind of just operating stuff that we need to keep the police department going. You'll see the body cameras on there. That amount that we owe for the body cameras was split over 5 years. As you know, the Packers picked up the front end of that, but there's some that's left for us to pick up, and we split that, and that's also listed in here as well. Rick Jerkanis, what did I miss?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Rick, okay. Hello, Alder Galvin. Basically, the chief nailed it pretty good. What we do is it's an annual replacement. We usually have 20 handheld radios, 5 mobile radios for the squads. We put $12,000 annually for the replacement of security cameras, if you will. That's all over the city and at City Hall and stuff like that. In 21, we do have a $60,000 charge or request to redo the interview room cameras. This isn't an annual thing. That would be something that we would look at replacing about every 5 to 6 years. The vehicles we have this year, I know we haven't gotten to them, but we have 6 general vehicles. Those would be detective vehicles, trip vehicles, administrative vehicles, if you will. And based on the timing of the new squad builds that we have right now, for 2021, we would only have to request 11 squads. But like the chief said before, that annually a good replacement cycle for these vehicles for squads would be 15 per year. That helps tremendously with your higher auction value and everything. So we did get behind there for a few years, and we dug, there was quite the hole to dig out of, and we spent a lot of money on repairs, probably about 3-4 years ago.
For 1 second, Rick?
Sure.
How long is the bonding for? Are the cars paid off by the time the bonding ends?
No. I can jump in on that one.
Okay.
We typically bond. It typically becomes a note, and it's a 10-year note. So in most cases, these are turned over in 3 to 4 years. So in most cases, no, it is not paid off by time that this car is now, the useful life is we've come to the end of the useful life. As far as arbitrage rules and debt rules, as long as the majority of your items are lasting on average over 10 years, that's why we're allowed to do this. I agree, it's not the perfect solution. Every year we are trying to put a few more of these items back into our operating budget, and we have been putting some items back in. This is would be a goal. We do have the option at any point to try to borrow for less than 3 years, but or less than the 10 years. But I think truly the better option is to get it into your operating budget, because you start borrowing every 3 years to replace vehicles. It's the same thing. It's still borrowing, but this is a 10-year note for these vehicles.
Okay, that answered the question. Thank you.
Is there a plan? I mean, do we actually have a solid plan we can look at to say by 2030 we will no longer be borrowing for vehicles for the PD?
I can't tell you have a solid plan. That would be just a priority if that is something that we decide that we want to make a priority. As you know, many things change between every budget year. We are looking at we're going to have some TIFs that are closing. We're going to start having some additional funds coming in that way. That could have open up give us some leeway. Do I have a solid plan at this point? That would be a very difficult thing to project right now. I don't have a 5-year plan that would show our budget is not out 5 years.
All right. And with the program that we're getting into with Enterprise, are we taking vehicles, non-squad vehicles? Because obviously I don't know if Enterprise would be interested in leasing us vehicles for squads, but non-detectives and other types of vehicles. Are we getting PD cars from that program?
Not at this time. Not yet.
At this point, I will start and then we'll let the police jump in. At this point, it is not. The police they've been in discussion, but they are not part of the program at this point. We have inspections, we have DPW, we have parks in our current leasing program. I know there's been talks with police whether or not they want to jump in. Same thing we could also do with the fire support vehicles. Certainly Enterprise is not interested in the squad car, or we just have not found the right program that we would want to put a lease program on our squad cars. But certainly the support vehicles very well could be rolled into the vehicle lease program.
Does PD have a comment?
You want me to take that, Chief?
Go ahead, Rick. I know we've been in discussions, but we haven't got anything that's definitive.
Right. Our fleet manager, Lieutenant Sobiak, has been looking into this, and I think it's going to be a gradual process to maybe 1 or 2 vehicles per year now. What we found out, according to Director Allenbecker, is we cannot use bonded funds to lease, nor would you want to, but some of the auction proceeds that we get from the sale of the vehicles might be able to do that, and then naturally maybe start blending in 1 or 2 vehicles a year into the operating budget. So that is starting to pick up steam, and Lieutenant Sobiak has been working on that.
Well, again, my memory is not the best at my age, but if I remember correctly, when Enterprise did their presentation to us, by rolling all our non-squad car type vehicles into this, the city was, I think, doing pretty well on that trade-in. I mean, it seemed like there was going to be a year or two where, I mean, that's why they're doing the whole fleets now, and not just piecemeal. I mean, piecemeal, I mean, that's fine, but it seems like if we could roll our detective vehicles and some of those community service vehicles and all that into this lease program, me, it seems like we're getting ourselves a little bit more out of the fire than we are right now. I don't know the exact numbers again, but 1 or 2 a year seems like it would take 10 years to get that whole portion of the fleet within that lease program.
Yeah, our current lease program is up and running. I don't know the exact amount, but I think there might be 10 or 15 vehicles of the first 45 that have now come in the door, and some of them are already on the street. So it's a kind of an annual program. Our first 45 have been obligated. By later this year, we will be looking at potentially another 45 or around that number of vehicles for that program. And at that point, we would definitely bring in the police department and potentially the fire support and see whether or not they want to start jumping in and get a portion of their vehicles updated on the next phase of this program.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I just want to ask a question to Director Ellenbecker. Director Ellenbecker, this is what you're calling the book. Did we get this in an email as well?
Yes.
Or where this version that is on here? I just don't know where that is.
Yes.
I sent the book. It was a Friday, maybe 2 Fridays, a week and a half ago. I sent it out, telling you that it would be coming and that it would be on the next finance committee agenda.
And I found that email. It just looks like the exact same thing as this. But
it is the exact same book.
Okay, except that my numbers are completely different. So I'm just going to not even try to keep up on my screen. I don't know. Alder Johnson, are your numbers different or the same?
My numbers align perfectly.
Oh, okay. You liar. I just don't believe it.
I'm not kidding. They do.
Alderdorf, if you look at the page number, Director Manley has jumped us all the way down to page 514.
He has, and that's not my page 514, but that's okay. I will just stop talking. Okay,
11
go ahead,
pages
Chief.
Director Manley, can you just scroll down a little bit so we can see the bottom of this page? So if you were to look at that book that was sent to you, Alder, it would be page 503 of your book.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So again, there's three major categories in this book. You either have your major items, which is your first large section, 400 pages of the book. Then you're going to have your equipment, and that's, pages about 300 to 500. And at the beginning of that, you're going to have a subtotal page like this, and then all your detail behind it in case you want to see the detail of these items. And then by the third section is your fleet, which starts on here on page 514, summary of the items, and then the detail pages again are behind it. So
now I can see it. So I just don't know how Alder Johnson's can line up with yours. But okay, so I subtract. What do I subtract? 7.
It's 11.
11 from each page. Got it. Okay.
Yep. So
okay.
I'm going to take a picture of this for you, Alderdorf, to prove it.
I just do not understand. But go ahead. Continue.
So I think that police has really gone through and just saying that they have, they originally requested 15 vehicles for 2021. Realistically, we asked how many can you get on the road in the next year before we have to bond again. Realistically, they look like they could get 11 on the road. So we reduced the request to what they realistically could get on the road. So we don't have money sitting there for over a year before they get the vehicle on the road. So what it sums up to that police for this year of $169,000 for equipment and $520,000 for fleet. And again, if you look in their second column, very similar for they have major. They have a new item in the major section. The equipment jumped up by $300,000. That's your laser and your body camera program. And then their fleet went up a little bit, but that's again jumping up to 15 squads versus 11 that's in the 2021.
A question I have is if we find that some of these funds that we're getting of the 25 million really can be used for some of these items, do we take things from future years and pull them back? Is that what we might do?
That's a very, very timely question because as the page that Director Manley have you on right now, in 2022, the police department is looking to replace a boiler or two and roof repairs. And yes, very possible if we believe the guidance is going to allow us to do building repairs. So these would be some very eligible items that could be moved up sooner, get the boiler repaired over at the police department or both of them, and potentially get roof repairs. No different, we'll talk about HVAC and in City Hall and some other projects. But again, until we truly see guidance, I don't want to promise you that we potentially are going to do this. Very well, if we could either pull them forward or we could still leave them on this list saying we're going to get out of that 25 million in 2022, we will do these projects. And maybe it's already planned out. We can just highlight everything that's eligible for this $25 million. And then which ones do council agree that these future projects now could be done with this grant money. And then that would reduce our borrowing in the future.
Or if we just built a new police department, we wouldn't have to fix the roof or replace the boilers.
I don't think that'll happen by next year.
Alder Galvin, you say that tongue in cheek, but that's actually one of the questions that I did have is the noticeable absence of a public safety building. Because, when I'm looking at this, right, and I'm looking at $315,000 to renovate locker rooms, and of course, just some of these other expenses, they add up. One of the other expenses in my mind that I saw outside of this department, $9.5 million to maintain City Hall over the next 5 years. Folks, I think there's some real merit in a global conversation about a unified building, and there's a way to achieve it. And the whole point of talking about 5-year capital improvement plans is so that you can start to, look at, some of these expenses long term and how they're being, how they can intersect.
Well, exactly.
Save a lot of money.
If you were to look at the cost of rehabbing that indoor range, the repairs that they're not doing, the evidence storage where we've had to spend money to store evidence off-site at other facilities, build new facilities. A municipal building built to hold City Hall and the PD, and I mean, we've got the land. We're trying to revitalize and better use our property downtown so we can get more housing and amenities in there that attract more people to the city. It certainly isn't something that we should just throw on the shelf. I mean, understanding that we have something that we need to do here, but I think it would be wise for us to truly consider taking a long shot look at this and look at the feasibility, I guess. City Hall has found that it's got empty floors. At one time they were full, and now we've got space at City Hall. So, I mean, it's something we should really look at. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for police? Did we kind of get through police?
Well, perhaps Alderdorf, if I could maybe get the chief's take on the public safety building. Obviously, that's been talked about. I'd love to get police department's perspective on that.
Sir, I completely agree with you. We are putting 60,000 into boilers, hundreds of thousands into rehabbing the downstairs. We're talking about a fence for outside in the parking lot. These are big investments in a very old, outdated building. We've been in conversations for 5 years now with 2 different administrations about getting a police building. I 100% support the idea of moving forward with that, but the problem has always been it's finding the $35 million plus that it's going to take to build that. And I just don't know if there's if the money's out there to finance that.
Well, I think a lease fixes that discussion. And you have to weigh the pros and cons of that. But perhaps what I'll do is I'll craft a communication here for us to take that up separately outside of this, because certainly that's a much bigger picture conversation. And I don't want it to necessarily weigh down the progress we need to make on this particular plan.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Alder Johnson.
Oh, go ahead. Commander Ward.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is, in one of the prior capital improvements, and Director Allenbecker can weigh in, but we had $1 million for land acquisition for, I believe it was this year. So we have that budgeted and slotted for that. So maybe that's where we begin the discussion.
We don't have that.
And Alder Johnson, I was on the committee and we worked on this and we met time after time and we had kind of a plan. And I don't know why it didn't go forward, but we need to buy the land first. We need to decide which piece of land. There were a number of them that were brought up. There is work that has been done. Now what we need to do is start implementing that work. So I'm glad to see that you're going to craft a communication because we need to continue. We started the work years ago.
And we don't have to buy the land if we own the land. And I've got ideas around that, but of course I wasn't around when that original plan was drafted. So I'll submit it separately because I do think that's a pretty heavy conversation.
Okay. Anything else for the police department then? It's just hard to believe that we've gone through this, but okay. So, but we're not taking any action tonight, right? Chief Smith, you may be excused to finish your dinner.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for coming probably to your last meeting. Thank you.
To be here. Thank you. And thank you for everything. You guys have been absolutely terrific. Finance has really been really stepped up for the police department over the years for us. So I thank you all for that.
Thank you for your work and your service. All right. Shall we move on to fire? And I can't see Chief Litton, but I only have a very small version of who's out there.
Yes, he's here.
Is he? Okay. All right. So take it away, Director Ellenbecker. You can call on whoever you want to.
I think we could go through very similar to how we went through police and Director and the Chief Litton can kind of lead the discussion on the very summary page as Director Manley has put up for the 2021 column. They're looking at before about $275,000 for major items. They have equipment of about 394,000 and fleet of 1.3 million, so a total of 1.9 million. And then it jumps up to over $3 million for request for 2022. So at this point, if the chief would like, Pam could scroll down to the major items, and maybe he could talk to those items for the fire department. But I will let Chief then kind of take it away from there.
So again, very similar to the conversation that we were just having about facilities. You'll see throughout these documents in this area various repairs to stations. We've got 9 fire stations now and a shop, so we have 10 facilities that we have to maintain. It's not one single facility. And as we look at things wearing out and being wore out, and the fact that really we haven't put any money into maintenance of I should say upgrades of facilities or repairs of facilities, you'll see these things interspersed, throughout this document. So you can see there in 2021, we've got an exhaust system for the shop. And also an HVAC system over there, repairs and replacement of their air conditioning and heating units. Station 4 roof replacement. And again, down right below that, the turnout gear, 2021, we replace between 45 and 50 sets of turnout gear. It's an item that should be in the general operating fund. It was removed about 3 years ago and put into the CIP. That's a regular replacement. The gear, each set of gear lasts 10 years. So 5 years frontline use, and then 5 years of their being basically their second set in case they have to go to a second set. If they've been in a fire, they have to wash the gear, so forth and so on. Or if they get blood on their gear or anything like that, they have to wash the gear. And so they have to have their second set for standby. So it's 5 years frontline, 5 years as their secondary set. And so that totals, $274,000. Now, if you're jumping next to the next line in 2022, the major difference in the line station rating system, $800,000 that was actually programmed in 2021, and because of requests from the finance department and Amir, we moved that back a year. But that's basically replacing 1960s technology in all of our fire stations for alerting them of calls, and so it's we're basically going from Mob Bell technology to software cloud-based technology for station alerting. So that's about the simplest way I can relate that for you. So like 1960s technology, the current year technology that's available.
Any questions?
And I'll just point out, if you've read my annual report, and perhaps some of you have, we've got the same as the police department. We've got two fire stations. One of them is 90 years old, and the other's approaching 100 years old. And those buildings don't last forever. And there is going to come a point where you have to replace them no matter what, or they're going to fall down. So there's some major expenses that have to go into those buildings, but just be aware, Station 1 and Station 3 both are 90 and almost 100 years old, respectively.
At one point, Chief Litton, did we talk about the administrative part, the Station 1 becoming part of that larger building and it was more of a public safety building with fire in it too? Or did that, I don't remember where we ended up with that conversation.
I don't think we ever got far enough. I mean, that was initially discussed. And then I think that, I guess my preference at this point would be, if you're going to rebuild Station 3, that you would put the administrative offices and areas in with Station 3, just have an administrative wing. I think functionally it's better both for the police department and for the fire department. I know at one point, and I'm not going to speak for the police department here, but they were looking at other similar law enforcement agencies and court and, some other, partners that they work with on a regular basis. It might be a better match. I wouldn't say absolutely no to it, but I think it makes more sense to rebuild Station 3, put an administrative wing in there, and then, sell off Station 1. It's on the river. maybe 4 or whatever. I don't know what it would be used for. And then Station 3, same deal. They're probably going to fall under the historic buildings. So I don't know that we're going to be able to demolish them. There's a similar case going on in La Crosse right now where they were going to demolish their Station 4 over there, and that station's only 80 years old. And the historical preservation got involved over there, and so that kind of put a fly in that ointment over there. So we should be aware of those. We should be aware of that as well.
Chief, if you could forgive me, which one is Fire Station 3?
Donald Avenue.
I should know that. It's in my district.
It is. I'm sure. Yeah. It basically serves, the Broadway and that whole, region there. It's got a pretty wide geographic response area there. It's situated in a really dense residential area. The parking is terrible. Access in and out of there, the road, it's in a pretty bad spot. If we had the technology, if they had the technology back then that we have now, as far as placing stations for best response, it certainly wouldn't be there.
That would really,
I'm sorry.
That would really take care of fire's major items. They still have equipment and fleet. I'm sorry, Alderdorf, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think we're not doing this right now, but when we looked at this in years past, there was always that number we had to get down to, but we're kind of not doing that because of the potential for other funding, right? So we're not going to waste our time doing that right now when we don't even know. Is that?
Yep. There on the revenue page, I can give you a very, very high level. Currently, the request right now for general levy borrowing is about 11.3 million. The goal always around at 8 million. Within that 11.3 million, there's a $2 million bridge repair. And if we would take that out, that would take you down to about 9.2. And there is, we believe that there's a very good chance that the American Rescue Plan Act could cover some of these items. So that is why I don't want to focus too much on the funding. Right. So we're not complete. Some years I've come in and said I'm at 15 million and we're trying to get to 8. We've already worked very hard to get it down to a little more, I don't want to say reasonable, but on the bottom of the page, like as Director Manley has just shown, right now the general levy borrowing looks about 11.3. Again, includes a $2 million bridge repair, which again, when we talk about infrastructure, we have other potential funding sources to pay for that bridge repair. There's a couple options, so that probably would recommend push it off one more year. Council approval, of course, that would bring us down to 9. If we could pay for some city hall HVAC or other projects, potentially we could get that down if we're using the ARPA money. So not that the funding is not important. Don't get me wrong, that is very important, but I think it might be bigger to look at the expense side. As we get more guidance in the middle of May, we'll be able to give you a better response on how much we think, if we were to approve all these, how much we would have to potentially borrow. So we have to wait on a little more guidance.
But then the numbers go up to 19 million. And that's kind of startling.
Yep. And that is mostly because if you look in the first column, any place that they had something anything that's lease, anything that we have left over carryover. I don't have any of that information pulled in here. The wheel tax of 1.7 million hasn't been added yet. So all the funding sources that we've identified for 2021, I haven't gone through that. I don't have that information. I don't know I can give you some of those estimates, but some of these, I just don't have anything added to some of those columns. So at this point,
that's all I needed. That's all I needed, Diana. Thank you. That's great. All right, continue on then with the rest of the fire stuff.
So we'll jump into now the equipment that the chief is requesting.
Oh, in this column here, Cam doesn't go all the way. There we go. We have half, basically the first half of our portable radio replacement. You heard the police department say that they're replacing X amount per year. We haven't replaced any since the system was switched over when we went to the Brown County system. So I think Alderman Galvin, you'll have to help me here. I think we switched over in 2010 or 11, maybe 9, somewhere around there.
I can't even remember my last name sometimes. So.
Yeah. So anyway, these portable radios are now approaching 13 years old. They're at end of life. They are digital radios, and again, just like with a computer, when you're working with stuff, it wears out and you're unable to tune them, and you have you have repairs and you have breakages, and then you can't find parts for them and so forth. So the time to replace, we've got between this year and next, we have 74 portable radios that need to be replaced. So we split them in. We split them into two pieces with the smaller chunk this year and a larger chunk next year. And then you'll see the base station radios 2, 3, station 4, and we do not have to do station 9, so that number will be coming out of there. I might move station 8 over and do those 4, but those are probably 1970 era base radios that we do not have, not able to find parts for, and it also will tie into the station alerting. We'll have to have modern technology base radios in those stations for the station alerting to work properly. So that's where we're coming up with on that part.
Okay, any questions? I don't see any. Great.
And then on that next page there,
Next page. Okay, go ahead.
Continuing on there, we have so the EMS bicycles. So we have, I believe it's 12 heavy duty bicycles that have special packages, I guess I'll say, to be able to carry emergency medical service supplies. We use these both at Packer Game Day at Lambeau Field, and we use them at all of the marathons. We use the bicycles at 4th of July and any of the major big special events where we have to get through crowds of people. We have found that the bicycles are the most efficient way of doing so, even on the marathons, quite honestly. We have a certain amount of bicycles that roam the marathons when the runners are going and so forth. Those bikes are 15 years old, they wore out, and they need replacement. And then you'll see a foam replacement down a little bit lower, and I'm going to leave that number there, but you guys are all familiar. You probably have heard the PFAS issue that's going on with foam, firefighting foam, and it's called a forever chemical, basically. There's some legislation being worked through the General Assembly right now, potentially putting $1 million into a special fund for the cleanup. It will not include the replacement foam, but it will have the cleanup. We have 1,500 gallons of this PFAS foam stored. We took it off all of the rigs because there's major environmental issues with it. And so it's being stored until we can access that money, hopefully that the General Assembly will pass in this year's budget. So this problem it exists all over the state. Every single fire department has this issue. We have estimated that it's going to cost somewhere around $2 million for the cleanup and the replacement, although there's only $1 million in a governor's budget at this point. So that number might show up again and again over the next 3 years. I might have to amend that depending on what happens with the state action on it. And that takes care of that section. I am down in Madison a lot lobbying on this issue. We're on phone calls with legislators, and we've got a lobbyist to the State Fire Chiefs Association who's working that issue real hard. And so we're trying to get that pushed through and actually get a little money added to it. But, we'll see where it goes.
That's great. And thanks for doing that, for taking that on.
And then
Any questions from the committee? Yeah.
Nope. Pam, and then if you want to jump to page 515 or the vehicles. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so under the vehicles, you'll see there the very first thing, the new fire engine that's actually slated. It was actually slated to go to Station 7. I'm not quite sure that it's going to go to Station 7 now. You all saw my email about Engine 8 that went out of service immediately, was taken out of service, unable to be used for fire service use any further. So we did move one of our, actually through the Bellevue, we had a reserve fire engine from Bellevue that we relabeled and put it in service at Station 8 as a stopgap. So I'm not sure. We need the fire engine, whether it goes to Station or Station 8 at this point, doesn't really matter to you. It's just the money is the money. So that's there. And then you'll see we've got 2 ambulances scheduled, the ambulance 6 and ambulance 8. And again, we're getting to the point we've been in a 4-year replacement cycle on the ambulances, and I'll just reiterate to you that we had the old van type ambulances that were 2-wheel drive and really just very poor for our environment in which we work. We've changed. We're in the process of changing those all over to a truck chassis, 4x4 chassis that, during the winter months and when we have very terrible weather that we have here during the winter, able to get the ambulances around the city without any special need for a plow or anything to get them there. So we're almost complete with that plan. And once we get where we have all truck chassis and we've got 6 frontline ambulances and we have 4 in reserve. Once we get to the point where we don't have any more vans in there, we'll start with a 5-year cycle on these and potentially maybe be able to get to a 6-year cycle. So we're not replacing them as often because they are heavier duty. We're hoping that we're going to have more life out of them. They definitely are, from a functional standpoint, much better, both on, in the street performance wise and from a shop perspective, easier to work on and to maintain. So I think we have, I don't know, Pam, if you can slide to the right there, I'm not sure. I want to see 24 and 25 if we have any ambulances. I think we probably do. Anyway, we lost it there, but maybe my screen's covering that up. Hold on one second. So yeah, if you look over.
If you go back to 515 again, Pam, it's there. Chief, we can see it.
Yeah, I had to minimize my screen. I couldn't see it. Okay. So if you look again over in replacement ambulance 421 in 2024, that's a mistype. That can't be 685,000. That's got to be corrected because that's not the right number. And then I think that 2025 we don't have any ambulances listed. So I think either in 25 or 26 is when we'll have them all replaced, and then we'll start with a 5-year cycle and see how that rolls, and then maybe eventually extend it to a 6-year cycle on them.
Yeah, I just think, Chief, there's a chance, could that be 2 vehicles, 2 ambulances that they rolled into one line potentially in 2024, and same thing in 2025? Is there 2 ambulances that they rolled up dollar wise?
It's possible. Yeah, it got added in there like that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't
Good
think,
catch though on that.
We'll have to check on our end what we actually put in there. I'll have to check that tomorrow when I can get on the system. But that's literally a good point. That would be the cost of basically 2 of them, plus probably. So we'll have to check on that.
That's why we go through this thing line by line, So it's a lot of work, but it works out. Any questions from the committee on the explanations?
No, Dor, if I can just point out one other thing. So
sure.
We had if you can go back, Pam, I think that I'm not sure if it's shown on this screen, but we've got 2 current fire engines that were made by Custom in Wisconsin, and the entire back end of those engines are stainless steel, and so they're in really great shape. You kind of have 2 pieces of the puzzle there, where you have a chassis, and then you have essentially the pump housing and the box that carries all the equipment. Those rigs are scheduled for replacement, and one of them scheduled for replacement, I believe, next year, and the other one is scheduled for replacement in 2024. And we've got a quote right now from Custom to just re-chassis those units. Basically what they would do is keep the pump, rework it, and then keep the back end, repaint everything and make it, look like it's brand new. And basically the price of that, I can get basically 2 fire engines done like that. We call them refurbished for the price of a brand new one. And we feel that that's going to work and that we should get 15 years of service out of those. So that'll be a little bit change in in this document. When you look at it next year, we'll be kind of changing the numbers around on that, but I just wanted you to be aware of it.
Great. All right. Is there anything else, committee or chief or Diana? Yes, Alder Johnson.
Just a quick question for Director Ellenbecker. So knowing that example that Chief Litton used where he can get 15 years service out of that unit, how do we make the determination about the length of the note, or when we tip to a bond, right? So when you look at a 15-year service life, are we bonding for that, or are we taking out a 10-year note, 15-year note? How does that work?
That is the useful life on it. Fire engines and fire equipment are have special rules when it comes to borrowing. We have the option to go out a full 20 years on that equipment. And I know if that's the useful life, I think Chief can say that. I think sometimes they even keeps them a few years longer in the reserve stock. So potentially, but fire trucks actually are usually bonded for 20 years. Again, we have the option of making anything shorter than that. Just we have to group it together, because every time you issue a new bond or a note, I pay closing costs on this new bond or this different length. So it's not as easy as just saying, well, let's group some of these and do 3 years, some do 5 years, 10, and then 20, because I have to pay additional issuance fees. So every year we typically do some 10-year and we do some 20-year. If we ever want something shorter than that, or like a specific project, let's say we want to buy one piece of equipment and we want, let's say, a 3-year or something to that effect, we'd be better off probably doing a state trust fund loan, which has really no issuance costs. And then we could pick exactly what we want, and you have the option of paying off early. The only difference is potentially you're going to pay maybe a slightly higher fee for that type of borrowing, but no issuance costs, and you have more flexibility. So we really do have more flexibility. We would just probably, like I said, create a state trust fund loan if we ever wanted to vary up the type of lengths and borrowing we do.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, our service life on the engines vary by where they're located. So a fire engine at Station 4 on the west side doesn't get as heavy a use. The roads aren't as bad out there. We might get 12, 14, 15 years front line use on that. And then let's say 12 or 14, and then we put it to a reserve status. At Fire Station 2 and 3 and 6, downtown, where they're getting, they're running across the roads and they're heavy use. We might get 7 or 8 years of frontline use on them, and then they have to go to reserve status, or sometimes we just sell them because they're in that bad a shape. We just get rid of them. So we don't do it based on years. We do it based on wearability, maintenance, out of service time, what it's costing us to maintain them, and emergency repairs and so forth.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
I guess my question, comment, this seemed to flow okay, where we kind of just, even though we jumped through their different type of requests, at least we went one department by one department. Does this seem to work okay? So then on the next finance meeting, and at any point we can talk about the other items, but we might not have that that director on the line. But I mean, we could work on another department, a larger department, maybe for one or two for the next meeting.
I think it makes sense to me to do it like this, because we're not getting overloaded, and it gets toward the end, people get so tired, and it's going smoothly. So we have parks and technology, and DPW be big. Maybe that one should be by itself.
Right. And again, just because of Director Grenier's timeline, I would just want to verify with him if he would prefer to do it in 2 weeks or if he would prefer to be 4 weeks out, But yes, correct. We continue. We still have a little bit of City Hall and parks is pretty large. Those items are pretty large together. We have some IT technology needs. And then again, when we do DPW or DPW, that we typically roll in sanitary storm and parking division all with one. So that would be one. Again, I probably will ask that director if he prefers 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now to have really to tackle. He's got by far the biggest dollars.
Right.
And
by then we'll also have more guidance. Mm-hmm. We may know, what we can use that 25 million for. So I think that will be helpful. Committee, how do you feel about that?
I like it.
Yeah, works for me. I like this.
Okay. All right.
Doing it this way.
You decide what you'd like to come next, and you use your logic to decide how we can break the two apart. And we'll just trust you.
And then can you help us make sure that we're all on the same page too?
How come Brian gets the good book and I don't? That's what I want to know. All right. What else do we got here? information, or we don't need to act on this discussion one. Now we're in informational contingency. What is going on? We still have 150,000.
Don't jinx us.
I know. Okay, I won't. It's almost May. It's almost
We
May.
just sent the city attorney back to tell us how much she needed. Don't forget that.
Well, I know. And I was thinking of this number. I was thinking of this when we did that. All right. And then the next finance committee meeting will be held Tuesday, May 11th at 4:30 p.m. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
To adjourn? Second?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
All right. Good day.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.